Welcome to this special edition of Happy Times and Places. It's a Doctor Who podcast where I try to be positive. I'm Toby Haydock. I've got friends who watch Doctor Who, so I ask them to send me their 5 favourite things about a particular episode or story. And this one, it's a celebration.
Hello, Toby, and here is me. Here I am. Here is me. I am here for your podcast to give you my 5 favourite things about Rose. I'm going to give you a favourite actor, a favourite line, a favourite location, a favourite scene, and then a favourite thing that's better in the novelisation than it is on screen. All of which you can feast on.
Welcome to this edition of Happy Times and Places. It's Toby Haydock here. This is a bonus edition. This is really edition 100 because the 100th story I want to cover for Happy Times and Places, well, it's got to be Rose, hasn't it? I did An Unearthly Child for the 60th anniversary, etc., etc., etc. Coming up to the 100th, it's going to be Rose. But today's the day. I'm recording this on the 26th of March. So what I'm doing is I'm going to do a full-length version of this with loads of different special guests, which will come out as podcast edition Happy Times and Places number 100. Those of you who are getting these as they come out on the various platforms are currently halfway through number 95. Is it 95? Death to the Daleks. So it would seem odd to suddenly release number 100. So what I'm doing is I'm releasing this as a bonus, which is my commentary and a special guest giving their 5 favourite things about Doctor Who, because that's what Happy Times and Places normally is. Me doing the commentary and a special guest giving their 5 favourite things. So that's what you're getting for this bonus release. In a couple of months' time, when we get chronologically to number 100, you'll get this with 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 special guests and loads of insight from correspondence who've had thoughts on this particular episode. But for this bonus, which I want to release today on the 26th of March, and I might just manage it, although time is a-ticking away, here's me doing a commentary on Rose and then joining a very special guest to mark. So this one's a bonus for the 20th anniversary of New Who, and then episode 100 will be Rose, the director's cut, shall we say. It's about 5 hours. But for now, I'm gonna count you into my commentary of Rose. Stick around for a very, very special guest giving his 5 favourite things, and then we'll be out of here. It's been a long wait. He's back. It's about time. And I'm going to press play on Doctor Who. Brand new Doctor Who. Old new Doctor Who. New old Doctor Who. In 3, 2, 1. Oh, now I'd heard the theme, I'm sure on the Chris Moyle show on Radio 1, or a friend of mine had told me to listen out for it or sent me a recording of it. I think he sent me a recording of it. And I'm sure it was slightly different to this. I think the opening was a bit more bash, or maybe it was just a glitch of the recording or a symptom of the recording. But I definitely remember the strings were what made me go, oh my goodness, that you can have a new version of the theme tune that is in some ways both old and new, because strings are a classical instrument, but that sort of augmented what we knew. And I love that theme, and I still love that theme. I do adore the original Doctor Who themes because they're so otherworldly. But this seemed to me, the fact that I think it's actually sampled the Who we use, hasn't it? I think it might be my favourite iteration of the modern theme. Isn't that interesting? You would think they would learn, they would do some things would get better as they learnt from mistakes, blah blah blah, but some things they get right and have never been improved. I remember Sylvester McCoy writing an article, I think it was in The Guardian, where he'd sort of said, if I did have a caveat, it would be the music. I remember me going, oh, this music feels a bit, it does feel a bit people who don't do sci-fi doing sci-fi, and it does look, what people have said about it, looking a bit Hollyoaksy, and the camera filter that's on and the colours that it gives it, odd, don't look like I would expect Doctor Who to look now, but they seem absolutely right for then. So it slightly dates it, but actually I was conscious of this colour palette of the time, and all of this seemed very fresh and modern. I quite like this, the fact that we've got no sort of dialogue, and when we're setting the world, it does feel like they're trying to introduce us to a world, but the ding, 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 that is very self-consciously kind of, we're doing a funky spunky sci-fi show, but actually I really like it. I'm very fond of it and got fond of it very quickly. I think the music is slightly different, isn't it, on the version that we have from the version that was broadcast. All those people who want 60s Doctor Who to be absolutely as broadcast, well, I don't think on home media we've got, have we, the version of Rose we all saw. We certainly don't have the one with Graham Norton in, which was definitely the first version I watched for a very long time, because I taped this on VHS. But it's straight into it. I will probably use the word economy a lot. I'm thinking about the security guard that handed her the bag, though. What's his story? I'm sure I'll meet him one day. But I wonder if it was exciting to him that he was the guy, because the line will have been done in ADR when he gives Rose the bag. But anyway, don't get distracted by it as supporting artiste, Toby, when you could be talking about the bigger picture. Welcome to Happy Times and Places, everyone. I will be talking about economy a lot. You can't have too much economy. We've set the scene. We've set Rose's life, the drudgery of it, the mixture of work and play, the people in her lives, without a word being spoken. Jackie there on the way that Jackie is in this story, I think, is magnificent. And we're straight into the adventure. We are in a dark basement. And we are with our identification character. We are with a normal young woman living a normal life, who's about to have Jane Asher recently described Nigel Neal's work to me as a clash of the rational and the irrational. Well, Doctor Who works with a similar thing, or a clash of the mundane, the everyday, plastic boxes underneath a blooming shop, a department store full of people. This isn't an ancient castle cut off from nowhere. This is this is where you think can't be scary, in the middle of the sort of place we walk past every day. She's not on a spaceship. She's not cut off in a vessel or anything like that. This is the everyday. This is the hardest place. It would have been much easier to do a sort of scary story in somewhere cut off or strange, but the genius of this is to go, no, I'm going to set it in a department store, on a high street, all sorts of places where you'd think there were several places to be safe. And I remember I don't remember exactly when I first heard the Autons were going to be back, but I was really excited because I've always loved the Autons. Although it's weird to think, isn't it, they were actually only in 2 stories, and they were in 2 stories before I was born. And it's peculiar that they never returned, and then that Russell T Davies decided to use them to relaunch the show, because it's not like he's launching with a classic monster, but it is also a monster that did launch a Doctor. But it's because they're an easy sell to an audience that may not be sort of sci-fi sympathetic. It's shop window dummies come to life. We all know what a shop window dummy is. But if you're a Doctor Who fan, it's a bonus because we know what they are. So it automatically says, oh, we've got an in here that the general public don't have, which is a nice feeling to have. And if you can have that without alienating the public, perfect. Run. The fact that the Doctor's first word is run, well, one, it's very economical. It's better than indubitably, Miss Tyler. But also, it says this is what the Doctor is. He's the man who grabs you by the hand when there's danger and says run. I mean, that is the pitch for the character of the Doctor. And the fact that then after that, drama and the wrestle and the, oh my God, the arms come off, he chucks it at her. That means he's used to this, and he's also quite quirky. And that's great because he said, she's come up with a theory. It's wrong, and he congratulates her. That's that. And then, oh God, he's alien and hasn't got time for niceties. Wilson's dead. Oh, and also people die in this. This is a show where people die, even your mate from work or whatever. I don't know how long it took Russell T Davies to write these opening moments, but But if I was to have written it, I wouldn't have done. I'm not good enough. But this would have been about 25 pages long, and I would have had to have slim down, because the real art of this is the way that introduces both of our characters, actually, but also the tone of the show. And I'm the Doctor, by the way. What's your name? Nice to meet you. Run for your life. That is, again, Doctor Who in a nutshell. There are so many moments that are sort of, this is what this show does. Honestly, it's genius. It's deceptive genius, because it's done with that trademark lightness of touch and breeziness that is often, a lot of geniuses like to show you how clever they are. I think the genius of this is the efficiency and the breeziness with which it is, with which it is put together. I think it's absolutely extraordinary. I've heard stories about wasn't there supposed to be a sofa landing on the street that almost caused. They're very CGI, those flames. I think we kind of knew at the time they were, but the TARDIS. And do you know what? Now this man doing this voice, I'm sure he interviewed me on local radio when I was doing my Doctor Who scarf. He said, "I've been in Doctor Who," or maybe he did the voice of Aliens in London, but he was certainly one of the voices of the news brought. There was no reason why he should have been either, but he just was. It was just one of those weird coincidences. Noel Clarke, I knew who he was because he'd been in the revival of Auf Wiedersehen Pet, which had been a favourite series of mine when I was younger, although I didn't watch the whole of the revival. It seemed a bit too all on film for me, or something, some pathetic reason not to watch something. But Russell T Davies is very good at creating these sort of domestic environments, and he likes his characters, even though they are in many ways terrible people. I mean, I always say this about Donna, is I love Donna on television, but in real life I really hate her. He quite likes, and I don't know why, he quite likes people who you could easily make awful. I did think this about Nolly, that wonderful series about Noel Gordon, where you go, he's made, he's really affectionate about this Harridan, and you sort of think, yeah, but I bet if I'd worked with her, she'd have been horrible to me. So why being nice about her? But because it's this joyous generosity about all of us with all of our faults, and of course that is good writing. I was watching One Day recently, which is a beautiful series on Netflix, based on the David Nichols book. And the one thing I thought was particularly beautiful about it was that everybody had their points of view and everybody did not great things sometimes, but it was very generous to those people. The writer had not gone, I'm going to set this character up and give them their just desserts. He was in fact kind to them, and I think that the fact that even the sort of funny characters and the selfish characters and the characters who are sometimes wanting, there's a joy in humanity with this work here, and of course that's what Doctor Who ultimately is, because Doctor Who fights aliens and travels in time. The anchor for us is humanity and is the world in which we live today and are watching from, and Doctor Who shines a light on those things, but also amongst all the craziness, always has a reminder of where we are and where we come from. She looks Greek, even though she is Greek, and he looks Greek, and all the skin like an old Bible, isn't there? All of that. He can tell you everything you need to know about a character, about a passing phrase they make as they deliver you a cup of tea. So you've got the realism. You're not just having people sitting around spouting exposition, but the textures are all there, and again with such economy. And this is a beautiful image, isn't it? Doctor Who, the Doctor sticking his head through the cat flap, and some could say that is a very clever link to Survival, the working title of which was Cat Flap. So Doctor Who ended with a cat flap and began again with a cat flap on accounts to state. I mean, there are links there. I don't think any of it's deliberate, but if you wanted to write an essay about Doctor Who, could. That light switch was a bit mucky, wasn't it? Look how dirty that light switch is. This is now you see, this is very much for me how Doctor Who and sexuality and things should be dealt with. Is that he doesn't really? It's not really his bag. And I know a lot of quite puritanical people don't like the fact that Jackie gets a bit saucy. People get a bit saucy, and people and sex is quite an important thing in people's lives. I don't think it should be an important part of Doctor Who, but if a non-Doctor character can exhibit our human foibles and we see it through the lens of Doctor Who, that can be quite funny. But so that works. That's exactly the right level of sex in Doctor Who for me. I remember there was brilliant pictures of that with the card flying about. Did he really read that book? I don't know. There's a lot of this where you go, is this a suggestion that he did that, or is he being a slightly showy offy Time Lord? But he's not showing off to her because actually she's not really noticing. It's one of those, it's one of those things where you go, are we supposed to believe he's read the book? But this is very funny. This is flirting with being terrible. It's really bad, silly humour, farcical, but Eccleston does it well. It's audacious, and that's the best Doctor Who actually doesn't play it safe and goes, I am daring you to do what someone's mum might do and go, this is silly, and walk out of the room. Because you have to embrace the fact, you have to accept that it's silly. It's very now, that doesn't mean you play it silly, that doesn't mean you wink at the audience, that doesn't mean you undermine the drama by overplaying the silly or dicking about. But you also have to embrace the silliness and sort of stare the audience in the eye and go, we're going to be doing this kind of stuff, and it's you've got to take it, you've got to join us in good faith. And we know, but come on. Because it's really hard. I mean, making telly is hard, making drama is hard, telling stories is hard. But to tell stories that sort of dare us to challenge and suspend our disbelief, and to go into a world, and to go into a world that is recognisable as our own, but a version where things that can happen that our rationality tells us can't, is tricky. I love the way he goes, hello. He's slightly. I remember talking to my friend Jeff, who has an autistic son, and I was saying I felt that Eccleston, when he's trying to do this sort of humour, I'm not sure he's always brilliantly comfortable with comedy, and that actually gives his comedy a slight sort of awkwardness, which makes him a sort of square peg in a round hole, which kind of fits the Doctor. That I think there's some awkwardness that's maybe not intended, but that's maybe being ungenerous to the actor. But that therefore sort of works in its favour. And I love I love the way that he does all of this, where he's sort of, his mind's racing about and he's not quite looking at her, and he's driving forward, and sort of spiking back at her because she's a human, and he's not communicating with her in a way quite like anybody else. I think it really works. I love these scenes between Rose and the Doctor, and I think Eccleston was a really odd choice at the time. He would not have been on my list, but of course, in terms of his caliber as an actor and his status as an actor, it was like, that's amazing. So I was absolutely intrigued. And it's not a price war. He has a sort of earthy warmth about him as well that we sometimes forget because he's so good at the intensity. I mean, I think there's nobody better at him than the intense stuff, and that was no surprise because I'd seen him do that kind of telly, and his scene in his final scene in Cracker is one of my favourite pieces of television. But here, this is where you get a synthesis of going, okay, this is what Doctor Who is doing today, and this is why these people are making it, and this is why it's got a writer of this caliber and an actor of this caliber, and how this is not just some exercise in nostalgia. This is not just picking up that show that I used to have, although absolutely Doctor Who of the olden days had good speeches done by good leading men, but this to me seemed to be the thing that you'd use as an example to show unbelievers about Doctor Who and go, no, this show, And look, he looks so hurt as he walks away as well. He's got actually lots of layers to him, and he walks almost like a sort of slightly damaged child in a way. He's a bit like a sort of marionette whose strings need a bit of repairing. But there is something strangely childlike, and I remember saying to Jeffy, he seems slightly. I did remember thinking, is the wind going to blow every time the TARDIS takes off? Surely they're going to have to get bored of that. They're not going to do that every time. And Jeff saying that, yeah, he thought that was not a glib assessment of mine, because people throw in mental health related observations all the time in ways that can sometimes be offensive. But I was glad that Jeff reassured me and said, no, there is a sort of a detachment and a slightly sort of spectrum-y feeling about the Eccleston Doctor. Which means, yes, he doesn't have quite the same communication methods as the sort of more straightforward. Don't read my emails, which I think is lovely. Poor old Mickey. I mean, Mickey gets a redemption arc. I'll be interested to see how I react to Noel Clarke's performance in this, because it was one, and I'd loved the way he was so enthusiastic in press releases and stuff. He obviously knew his Doctor Who and liked Doctor Who, but I did find Mickey a performance style-wise slightly on the edge of what I was hoping for, and I think Noel Clarke has said that since, that he changed his performance as he twigged that they were aiming for a slightly different kind of crowd. Although I did mention that to Russell T Davies when I interviewed him, and he wasn't having any of it. So we can all theorise what we like, but Russell was like, no, this is exactly as it should have been. So and I like that cart. But and so we're about to meet the first guest star, and I remember see, is that man scary? Oh yeah, that man is scary, because he's got the killer bin. And I think there was an SFX magazine preview. Oh, he'll be 100 years old now, that boy. That I think had prepared me that there might be something I didn't like about the bin. Mark Benton, the first sort of guest star of New Who. I remember being quite excited that he was on, because I knew he was. In fact, I'd seen him in Accidental Death of an Anarchist at the National Theatre, where he was the constable. That's a play I've been in, and the star was Alan Cumming. Trevor Cooper was that as well. Lorcan Crouch. The Doctor and She's a She. That is a brilliant just reminder of what the mission statement is here, is that for Doctor Who to survive, there needs to be a lot of people who are a she watching the show. And I think that is the greatest achievement of this revival, in that it consciously and adeptly made itself a show that was suddenly acceptable to have a female following, which for some reason had always kind of evaded it. Yes, there are female Doctor Who fans of old, and there were some women and girls who watched classic Doctor Who, but it was largely, and the flag wavers for it were largely males of a certain age, and a big gay following as well. But it needed very clever here too as well, bringing JFK into it, because of course JFK is forever associated with Doctor Who, because his assassination was, it's the great trivia question. It's the talking point at parties, isn't it? Doctor Who started the day after the assassination of John F. Kennedy. So to tie the Doctor in with that event is artful and clever, and gives another connection for fans. But also the JFK assassination is also tied up with conspiracy theory and the X-Files, and there was a show called Dark Skies that I'd really enjoyed as well. That where big events in world and particularly American history are tied up with sort of aliens and sci-fi and conspiracy. So it lends Doctor Who a little bit of that as well. And this is an important thing, that you've got this funny character who lives in his shed, but he tells you that, yeah, but remember that this, and what happens to him later, emphasises that as well. This is a show where people die, so it may be quirky and it may be strange, but, a lot of people don't get out of it alive. So for all the lunacy, and because we're making this show light and funny, and the contrast between humour and the madness of it, yeah, but it is all of that stuff is in contrast to the very real danger and death, and then you've got the contrast here, is you've got something that turns out to be dangerous and potentially deathly, but it's also a moving bin, which also brings in the everyday. Let's make the everyday weird. Let's make the danger lurking round the street. I'm sure, round the corner in Tooting Bec, there's a Yeti sitting on the loo. And again, it's really deftly and artfully deployed. The Doctor's making house calls, and he's really good, Mark Benton, because he's funny and he's sweet, but he absolutely is selling the fact that this is dangerous stuff. And of course, the person that knows about the Doctor is a guy who goes on the internet and keeps lots of things in his shed. So there's a sort of meta thing going on there as well. As I talk about this, there is so much about this that is well judged. And the killer bin, this is for the time, I remember thinking this was a pretty neat effect, and was not, we didn't have CGI in old Doctor Who. So this was one of the first sort of major bits of this is how the show is gonna look. The bin burping, I remember that was the giant rap. It's almost, Doctor Who has to have something in it that disappoints me, that makes me worry and look and go, oh, that's gonna, the general audience. Of course, I was always worried about the general audience, and I wasn't a fan of the bin. And again, when I mentioned it to Russell, I said, you didn't do anything like that again. Again, he wasn't having any of it. It's interesting. Someone in the comments, didn't they, said Rose not picking up that Mickey is now obviously some weird alien is slightly stretching it a bit, but I think we accept it because she's not really communicating. It says actually some stuff about their relationship, but also she is now down the foxhole of thinking about the Doctor, who's turned her eye and curiosity. And as somebody that lives with somebody who quite often has conversations with her where I'll go, yeah, and I don't, and she'll say, you haven't listened to a word I've said there, because I've just had a message with somebody saying something about the DVD release or a missing episode or a piece of casting or whatever. So if I have to say, if Cheryl Lee suddenly had a different hairline and was grinning like a lunatic and talking about pizza, I might not notice if somebody had said, have you seen the latest tweet from Film is Fabulous? And Noel Clarke does this well, even though, again, it's probably as on the nose as you get in this of stretching credibility. But it's a great way of having the Doctor come in, and she's so natural, isn't she? The way that she does all of that stuff. Billie Piper is amazing, and the Doctor's here, and that's a great way for the Doctor to come and do show that he's the guy who knows that there's problems, and to introduce Rose to the danger once again. I love the fact that this is modern Doctor Who, guys, is that in the restaurant it's the guy that screams. I remember being so delighted by that, because it's just, again, another one of those subversions of what we might expect, but that not in a way that's critical of anything, but that is cheeky and fun, and just a nice little moment that needn't be there, but the fact that it is adds to the whole beauty of all of this. And so now we're going to get this is where and again the Doctor Who is about juxtaposition, it's about dissonance, it's about two things clashing often, and there you've got her running for her life as the door's being smashed, and him casually strolling to the police box, and all of that stuff is really compelling, and all of that stuff is kind of what Doctor Who is. It's about two different things that shouldn't go together, somehow creating strange beauty. And I wonder, again, like those first 5 minutes or so, I wonder how long they thought about, so do we see her go in? Do we see it from her point of view? What do we... I suspect it all came from Russell T Davies, but she's been in once, we didn't see what she saw, and now we follow her in. Murray Gold helps as well with the music. This, I think, they call this the Chants of the Flavia, and then you've got this amazing shot. This is not how we've ever seen a TARDIS before, really. I've never wiled about the. I can see the rationale behind it, the slightly organic element of the TARDIS. I prefer my things to be a bit more Heath Robinson than, it's grown. That just doesn't quite fit with my aesthetic, but that's not a criticism. It's more of a confession. I love the way he basically stands there and goes, well, you're going to have questions. What are they? There's no sort of floweriness about it. You go, you may have noticed my idea. Blah, blah. He's just like, yeah, I'll make this easy for you. And of course, that's a natural question for her to ask as well, and brilliant that he hasn't thought about it. That shows that yes, he's going to be this wise, intelligent, benevolent alien, but he's going to drop the ball sometimes, and he sort of needs her to remind him of that, and that whilst he has all these wonderful things about him, he can also be crazy and strange and difficult, and he can never quite be our best friend, because we are on a slightly different level and or plane from him. It makes the most of the dynamics that are available between Doctor and companion, and there's so many things to negotiate. The age gap, the fact that so many things that he takes in his stride would be absolutely, impossible for us to deal with. The fact that Rose is obviously portrayed as somebody who's got a bit more intuition and a bit more get up and go and is very smart. And I love the way she kind of chastises him, and that it's not just, oh my gosh, you've got a spaceship, this is marvellous. That the fact it gives her, something to reject, because again, it would be a bit too sort of easy, wouldn't it, to just go, oh wow, you've got a spaceship and you like aliens. She really sort of resists this and him. And also the fact that, yes, I love the way he goes, it's a disguise, when it's not. It's a terrible disguise now because we don't have police boxes. That's a brilliant choice from Eccleston there. I love the way he says it's a disguise. And we're getting bits of exposition here, but he's making it... he's boiling it down to his essentials. Rose, again, he's not showing off, and that helps the fact that we've got this Doctor who's a bit more down to earth and a bit more blunt. It means that the temptation to be sort of flowery about it all is resisted. This and this is quite funny. I mean, it's silly, but it's quite funny, isn't it? And of course you have to show that the Doctor is not Captain Kirk or Captain Picard or a Marvel superhero. He is he does miss the obvious, or he is slightly askew. The Doctor is slightly askew. Oh, like that camera angle, which is beautiful because we've got the recognisable Big Ben, but that's like, and there's nothing more thrilling for me than watching these two run across, and this piece of music is called, isn't it, Westminster Bridge, and the Big Ben, the Houses of Parliament, red buses, Sometimes, when American things do British things, they'll have a red police box and a bobby and all of that, and you go, oh, you're just grabbing things that you've seen in a breast implants, good gag, that you've seen in a London gift shop to say that is what Britain is like. But actually having that bridge, that clock, those buses, because Doctor Who is a British institution, and I needed that. I'm not very good at geography, so I don't think I'm looking at London. Cardiff pretending to be London. I'm convinced that that's London, but when they're in those streets, because I don't really pick up on geography. I'm too busy trying to spot character actors at 20 paces. But having those, because it harks back to the Daleks on Westminster Bridge, and having and the Cybermen and St Paul's Cathedral, it's a very Doctor Who-y thing to go, let's put us in front of some things that are instantly recognisable as British, and that gives Doctor Who a feel all its own. This is a magnificent location, isn't it? This feels like the place a Doctor Who story should be said. And a note about Ernest Vins, the cinematographer who was responsible for a lot of the look of Doctor Who when it came back, who died last year but worked on more episodes of Doctor Who than many, many, many people. And I love the lighting here. The lighting in this is fantastic. And so we get the Nestine, who's a bit of a sort of straightforwardy CGI blob. But again, I mean, the whole alien threat in this is... It's called Rose. Jack Sharp mentioned he wished they'd gone for a more interesting title. But Rose is the title because Rose is our conduit to not only Doctor Who, but to the Doctor... not only to the Doctor, but to Doctor Who, the series. We need Rose. Without Rose, this series wouldn't have worked. Rose stops us getting the bends when we're thrown into the heady atmosphere of Doctor Who, and this alien invasion story is not really what this episode is about, but it's funny hearing stuff about the Shadow Proclamation and all of that, and dropping things in that I just thought it was kind of it was the Doctor just sort of boasting and being a bit alien-y, but a lot of this sort of stuff comes back, doesn't it? And I remember listening to the commentary of this. Is it on the DVD? Yeah, where I think that they were slightly lamenting, weren't they, that a lot of the episode, or some of the episode, is now spent with the Doctor sort of poised over the edge, and they've nicked the TARDIS as well. But the anti-plastic, as of course, is controversial as well. He's got the resolution to the adventure. Oh yeah, I fought in the war. You think, is this just colour? I don't think we'd conceived about the saving of the world. I thought that was just maybe there to suggest that he's the Doctor. He travels through time. There's a bit of a backstory. I didn't realise that a lot of what was being seeded was going to be part of this arc, because I don't think at this point I'd anticipated there being an arc. I knew, there was going to be continuation of Rose and her family probably, and we'd see these characters again. But I didn't think there'd be a sort of story arc involving, a time war and continuity of something that we might hear a reference to in a speech that actually resonates all through the season to the final episode, because this was a new way of doing Doctor Who, and yet it seems so obvious now, and that without those linking arcs, which have to be deployed very carefully, because you don't want to alienate people who are just popping in every now and again, but you do want to reward people who are poring over the minutiae. I like Clive's little speech about the doing spreadsheets and stuff like that. But yes, the anti-plastic is, is a, we know how to defeat them already, but that's because that's not what the story is in another story about an Auton invasion. I'd want him to come up with a cleverer solution, but he's come up with that off stage. But poor old Clive, and this is where, well, we've got the same sound effect and a look on his face. He knows he's going to die. It's horrible. And they've just watched lovely Clive get gunned down, and it makes me really sad. And that's partially because Mark Benton is so good there, but also it's horribly shot in the face at point-blank range. But also that he was a sort of cuddly, nice, kind of unkillable character. See also Linda with a Y. So Russell T Davies, for all his marvellous and the joyousness of the adventuring that he portrays, that's the family of a man we liked, who was really sweet, who's just been killed. So that makes you not unconvinced that Jackie Tyler, who's been this funny, crazy woman, will be killed. You know, she is genuinely under threat, even though she's a humorous character, which means that we have these scenes going on, which aren't just, you know, a load of extras that we don't know. I mean, we've got Clive's family there as well, but it gives us a stake in the invasion that is happening because we're anchored to one of the characters who's caught up in it, whilst the Doctor and Rose can be doing their business sort of at the sharp end of it, if you like. And things like having them as brides, I thought was clever. And I remember a friend of mine had seen a picture or something and said, and one of them's, you know, a child Auton, which is again we go, yeah, okay, well we'll do the shop windows dummy thing that they did in 1969, 1970, but let's have some of them dressed as brides, because that's a wonderful thing that we've perverted to create threatening, and also a child, a smaller one. I like this wall of music. I'm a big Murray Gold fan. I know some people think the music's full on, but this is really building it up to a climax. We are being slightly distracted from the fact that the Doctor has now been standing on the edge of this ledge for approximately 100 years, but it's okay. But I think this is brilliant. This is paced so well. Keith Boak gets a bit of stick for his direction, and I think God, they were learning so much, weren't they? But I think the pacing of this is great, and the way it cuts between the different points in the action, and you've got Jackie under threat, and the guns come over our hands, the Doctor there, and I love that build-up. I love Rose's speech about going, because it's very important to me, that it says to you, you're not, you know, this is not somebody who's, you know, did the best exam in Starfleet. This is somebody who wasn't great at this and wasn't great at that, but suddenly remembered she got the bronze. She didn't get the gold, she got the bronze. And that's just enough. That's all you've got. But all you've got is just enough. And I think Doctor Who teaches that as a very important lesson. All you've got is just enough to what? Save the world. And certainly to get through whatever it is that you're going through. I get quite emotional about it. It is. Doctor Who is disposable and it's trivial and it's not important, but by God, I don't think I'd be here without it. And I'm not special in that either. That's the point. Nobody's special, and yet that the very fact that nobody's special makes everything a little bit special. Now, that doesn't mean you then have to impose your specialness on everybody else and go, pay attention to me, I'm special. Your own specialness should be enough. What you have within you, not the validation of other people, should give you enough, the wherewithal to overcome that loss, that death, that setback, that invasion by alien shop window dummies. And they killed Clive. But my worry was that you didn't see him die. And I thought, oh God, because we don't really have programs like this anymore. Because most sort of sci-fi and stuff like that had either been adult sci-fi, something like Invasion Earth, which was a bit sort of po-faced, and or you had stuff that was sort of children-y stuff, from the UK anyway, where, you know, you wouldn't show some of the things you'd showed in old Doctor Who, like people getting stabbed and shot and blown up and all that. So I did think, are we not going to see people die? Because we don't actually see people killed. Of course, that soon changes, and there was lots of lovely people who die over the course of the next 12 episodes. But it was an unresolved thing for me. Come the end of this episode, was is that going to be one of the things I've got to get used to, like 50-minute self-contained episodes? And I think I did feel, and you know, the climax of this was a bit hasty. I hope the anti-plastic was just a thing typical to this episode. Poor old Mickey, he's not invited. But and of course I'm sure Russell T Davies put the production documents or something in one of the specials in one of the magazines, and of course he says it's when he says it travels in time and she runs, and that of course is emphasized by the way that they treat the picture, and it's slightly in slow motion, isn't it? But you genuinely and look at his face. He is such a good actor. There's so much in that. He was being a bit blasé about it, but he's slightly hurt. He's slightly wounded. And I think he sees in her, even though he's acting all superior to her, because he knows more than her, he's experienced more than her, he's fought more than her, he's done more than her, and yet she has something, a spark, a gusto, an intuition that hasn't been soiled by centuries of intellectualism and perhaps being ground down by experience and cynicism and loss and all of that. That is vital. She is a spark to him, to sort of get his old engine going again. But that means it's a sort of two-way relationship. I hate the idea that the Doctor absolutely has to have one of us, otherwise he's rubbish. We don't want that. That's elevating humanity above its station. But this is very much a two-way thing. He will survive being lonely and doing brilliant things without her. But somehow the alchemy between them brings out the best in both of those characters. And that is why, for all, the brilliance of the alien invasion and the fine work of the special effects people and the budget-defying stuff that they did, the relationship between the Doctor and Rose powers this season and really does, kickstart the revival. And actually, these next time trailers are really important. These become the cliffhangers. And they became as exciting a part of the episode as the episode themselves. And look at this. I could read these credits, every single one of them, and I put all those names to memory. Even the crew. Now the credits would be over, and I think that's something where television should be ashamed of itself over the past 20 years, sending names flying past and shrinking credits and talking over them, and it's just like stripping the covers off a leather-bound book. But anyway, let's accentuate the positive. The fact that the cliffhanger became replaced by the next time trailer, and I thought that was a brilliant way of conjuring that excitement for next week that was usually done by the cliffhanger, and replicating, not exactly, but giving a replacement to that in the form of the teaser for next week. I know a couple of people who switch off and don't like watching the next time trailer. I take the point with the two-parters, and I'm sure when I talk about Aliens of London, that there is an issue there where the cliffhanger is seen to be resolved almost immediately. But and especially because those first three episodes are all so different, and that's again another piece of brilliance. Present day Earth. Then we have the future of the end of the world, as far forward as you go, and then we have the episode in the past. So each episode has within it, in the form of the next time trailer, another example of what the show would be like, saying, you're not going to see another invasion of Earth next week. No, we're going to be on a mad, colourful spaceship full of aliens. You go, oh right, okay, I still don't know what I've got. There's still a bit of a mystery. There's still the unknown quantity. So I am anticipatory and I am excited. And that is what, of course, keeps Doctor Who going, and is another of the reasons there is still anticipation and excitement 20 years later. Now listen, who could I get to be a guest on this that would be really important on this day of all days? And I know people would think, oh, well, he's interviewed Russell T Davies, so they probably talk all the time. And we do occasionally email, but I ration them because Russell T Davies is the sort of person I suspect who gets asked a lot of favours, and I never want to be a pain in somebody's backside. And I'm sure very successful people have to occasionally change their contact details because somebody has taken it too far. So I hope I've always judged that right, but I agonised about going, how do I celebrate happy times and places and include a fan perspective and people that I hang out with a lot or am in contact with a lot, or and I've got this podcast to the position that it is in. But how do I also mark the 20th anniversary after? And actually, having Rob Shearman and or Mark Gatiss would have been enough. I could have just had them, but I don't make life easy, do I? So I churned up inside with the idea of asking Russell T Davies to give me his 5 favourite things about Rose. And then I wrote the email, and then I put it in my drafts, and I didn't send it. And then that one said, and don't worry, we've got 3 or 4 weeks before I need to record it, so you've got plenty of time. And the one I sent said, and I'd like to have it by Wednesday, please. And that was last Thursday. So look, I kind of expected it just to be politely ignored, to be perfectly honest, because he's a busy man. And anyway, our final guest for this 100th edition of Happy Times and Places on the 20th anniversary of Doctor Who as resurrected by Russell T Davies is, well, look, if at first you don't succeed, well, I did succeed, didn't I? I interviewed him for Who's Round and he was very nice. So why was I shy? Well, because I am, and because, you don't take the mickey. But anyway, I asked, and he said yes. So what joy. Special guest, the final special guest. So allow me to present to you the 5 favourite things of the man without whom Rose would not be a thing. Russell T Davies on Rose, on Happy Times and Places. Here he is, and all I can say is hooray and marvellous.
Hello, Toby, and here is me. Here I am. Here is me. I am here for your podcast to give you my 5 favourite things about Rose. I'm going to give you a favourite actor, a favourite line, a favourite location, a favourite scene, and then a favourite thing that's better in the novelisation than it is on screen. All of which you can feast on.
Oh, now, if only I'd known that, because obviously I don't listen to this until I listen to it live, so I've only just heard that, although I will probably now put it at the beginning of the podcast somewhere. So those were clues, but I don't have those clues, so I definitely haven't chosen something for the novelisation. But I could have done. I could have chosen whatever I liked, but I'm a point down already. But
right, so here we go. Number 1, actor. I'm going to choose Ellie Garnett. You have told me I'm not allowed to choose Chris, Billy, or the leads. But Ellie Garnett plays Clive's wife, Caroline, in this. And I love that. I think it's a lovely performance. I think it's note perfect, tricky little part. But, I mean, I doubt you would have guessed I'd choose her. But she gives me the chance to tell a good story, an actor, which I know you love and based your life on. So the thing about Ellie Garner was she came and did this and was absolutely wonderful and note perfect. And then many years later, Big Finish came along to do Rose Tyler, the Dimension Canon, a spin-off thing in which they brought back Clive and they brought back various alternate realities from 2005. So they wanted to cast Ellie Garner again. She had given up acting and vanished and they couldn't find her. And so they contacted me and said, can we recast? And I was like, well, do you know, I'd really rather you didn't because she's so good. I think that's a real shame. And they went and looked again. They contacted wherever she'd gone to drama school, Lambda or RADA or Central or somewhere. No record of her. And again, they came back again and said, can we recast them? And it's just such a shame to do it. And I remember saying it's because I know Doctor Who fans. And I said, if anyone can find her, it's Doctor Who fans. And they will find her the day after your release is released with a new actor. And they'll walk up to her saying, look, you've been recast. How do you feel? And I said, I'm just really loath to, she might have really enjoyed making this. And it might be sad that she's been recast. Please try and find her again. And the point of it is, they did find her. Somehow, I forget how, David Richardson, Big Finish, actually went and found her. And so she did appear in as Caroline again in the Dimension canon and was lovely. So I'm really pleased about that story. And thank you, Big Finish, because it's just nice, So, I mean, whatever she's doing in life, she's got a lovely and big episode of Doctor Who on her CV, and I think a lot of actors will take a lot of satisfaction from that. And we kind of paid her back by bringing her back, so that pleased me. Well done, Ellie.
Oh, well, of course I'm a sucker from that story, he says, as a friend of his looks out from Doctor Who magazine, because she's in Doctor Who now. And that is a lovely story. I didn't know that Ellie Garnett had stopped, because I do. She is great, and I remember thinking about some of the actors playing small parts in Russell's Doctor Who, and there are no small parts, only small actors. There are some parts when you go up for them, you go, no, that's a small part, and oh dear, but you do it anyway because you have no choice. I have a tiny part coming up in something, but it's going to be working with one of the great comedy actors of our time, so you do it. I'm not grand, but I'd be a liar to say I wouldn't have preferred to have been playing this part actually that I went up for, that is also played by an amazing actor. So again, you sort of go, yeah, but if I'm losing out to him, that's okay. If I was in a chance with getting the part that he got, wow, and they've given me this as consolation, which is what happened. That's part of it, and you don't be too grand, and you be grateful because you know that. Well, I know that all my old mates at university were thrilled that I'm working with this actor that we all hugely admired when he was doing stuff when we were at university, and we all talked about and quoted and blah blah blah. So it's all about perspective and being grateful for things. But of course the harsh reality is, she's in the first episode of Doctor Who and it comes back, which is a massive success, but acting is hard, to the extent she wasn't acting anymore, and even that nobody could find her in this day and age. And I find Vord in Canada. But that's how easy it is to just slip off the radar. So I love that story, and I actually love the fact that Russell, as a writer, has that sort of empathy for actors, because it means that, like the guy in Boomtown, Alec Pedrick, who I think they talked about a little bit in the preview in Doctor Who magazine, saying, oh, he's this and he's that and the other. His part on the page is tiny, minimal. It's 6 lines or something, but he gets to do a Doctor Who, and he gets a give me back my man, and it's worth sticking on your show reel. It's worth if you say, oh, I was in a Doctor Who, I was in that one. If you'd seen the episode, you go, oh yeah, that guy. Not like a lot of TV parts that you get where sometimes you go, even I was in something recently. I was in Waterloo Road, and it was a good part. It was a really nice part, but there's lots of bits which were $1 million to me, that actually in the finished program they've got a close up of the two regulars whose show it is, while my hard work is all in the background, and what you sort of imagine you're doing and coming across as looks very different in the program. I can still use some of that on my show reel, but not as much as perhaps I'd thought I might be able to, or certainly a couple of really good bits. So it is being an actor is hard comparatively. I know it's not living in Syria or whatever, being bombed and all these sorts of things, but that's a reminder that even having that being part of that amazing moment is no insulation against the the ups and huge downs of an actor. But it's comforting to hear a writer and a producer have empathy for those sorts of occurrences, because I think it is easy sometimes to feel that things that it's deeply, if you're an actor, it's deeply important. It's your life. It's my life. It really is. To think that people just view you as collateral. So it's nice that a big mover and shaker in television, and we should know that, because even the 3-line parts he writes are worth turning up for. That is somebody who has empathy for actors. But it's nice to be reminded of that, and it is part of why I like his worldview and I like his work. And I like that. We've got an actor story, and I thought when he said I'm going to mention actor, I thought I'm going to get a point here. He's going to mention Clive, but I wish I had mentioned Ellie Garnett, because I have always liked what she does in it, and I wanted to give her a nod, and I didn't, because I got swept up in everything else. And then he comes along and he mentions her, and that is quite right. And no, I probably wouldn't have thought that you would, but the fact that you did tells me everything I need to know and seems so right. Because, of course, of all the actors you could have chosen, you've chosen one who probably, well, who hasn't been on the lips of anybody else with whom I've talked about this episode. And that's why, you know, Russell's characters are so good, because nobody is unimportant. And that's kind of Doctor Who, isn't it? Actually, nobody is unimportant. You've got this lofty, godlike traveller in space and time, but who hangs around with, you know, security guards and miners and people that have a shop and all of that. And nobody is unimportant, even though looking down upon us, we are specks. When he's up close, we are important. And as people, lonely, frustrated, disappointed people, it's nice that Doctor Who makes us feel that actually we might be important. Yeah. Number 2.
Right. Number 2. Favourite line? I'm just going to choose simply Chris grabbing Billy's hand and saying, run. Because in one word, that's my whole version of the show summed up. Murray Gold always says you reach 25 or 26 minutes into my scripts and that's when everyone starts running. And it's true. Sometimes I look at the time code in an edit and I go, oh my God, he's right again. You take 25 minutes to set everything up, and then it's like, I always think it's like pulling a string on a spinning top, battling tops, you whiz like that, and everything starts spinning. Run. Simply that. Perfectly delivered. Thank you, Chris. Beautiful.
Well, that's the. I think I get. Do I get it? Because that's the economy, and that's definitely what I was thinking about. It's the introduction of Doctor Who, isn't it? Hold hand, run. But I hadn't thought about. And when I think about, you know, I remember when we were rewatching a lot of Russell T Davies Doctor Who during lockdown, it was the fact that every 5, you know, we talk about the loss of cliffhangers because we don't have 4-part, 6-part adventures anymore. Actually, in the really good new series episodes, there's a cliffhanger every 5 minutes. The stakes change, the focus shifts. Something seismic happens that either piles on more jeopardy or gives them something else to fight or run away from or juggle whilst they're trying to live their lives, come up with a solution or whatever. And I think of things like Utopia, where you've got all that stuff happening and Derek Jacobi is looking at the watch, but at the other end of the building, there's explosions happening, they're battling this, they're fighting that, and then they realise this thing and they have to run, and that's where Murray Gold's music comes in as well. And yeah, the whizzing top, that is very much the modern Doctor Who that I love, is when it's all kind of everyone's. I've written a book called Running Down Corridors. Come on, and it really is a part of Doctor. And of course, it's a part of Doctor Who from the olden days. But whereas Running Down Corridors was a bit of a cliche and something you'd slightly raise an eyebrow at with old Doctor Who, today it's part of what gives it its pace and its energy and its zest, where it's, you know, adventuring and high octane and edge of the seat, and it really is that's stuff, all of that, yeah, running up and down and saving planets. That's Doctor Who. But the economy of that, run, boom, and he sort of, you know, repeats the trick slightly later, doesn't he, with nice to meet you, run for your life. There's going to be a lot of running in Doctor Who, and we love it.
Next one is favourite location. I'm going to choose, that's the London Eye, for bigger reasons than it sounds. Actually, that was such a big decision to make in the script, and I'm literally sitting in my office now, where in Manchester, where I wrote this episode, and I'm in the same chair, and life has not moved much in 20 years, believe you me. And I remember sitting here for days thinking, is that going too far? Is that too silly? The bit where, you know, the Doctor stands there and there's the London Eye behind him. But more than that, the fact that the Auton base, the Nestine base, is underneath the London Eye. Because normally in a Doctor Who script, and all I ever had up to that point were normal Doctor Who scripts, normally the Doctor would have detected the Auton signal, beep, 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 oh, let's follow this signal, and you'd have gone to like a deserted warehouse on the outskirts of London, or some old abandoned church, or something, you know, something more Doctor Who-y. And the decision to sort of say we're going to take great big London landmarks, which they hadn't done since like 1966 in the War Machines, but they had done it in 1966. But to decide to do that was a huge move. I remember I very rarely ever talked about writing with my husband, ever. Never, in fact. But I remember with him saying, if you discover the alien base is underneath the London Eye, is that too far? Is that daft? Is it unbelievable? Is it too silly? And he said, well, sounds great to me. That sounds a laugh. And that's the point. It is a laugh. It's like, was it too funny? It sounds daft. It sounds so, it so clearly worked. We then spent the next 20 years disrupting London landmarks till we built the Unit Tower. We built one of our own. But literally we went up and down the Thames, trashing things, the Globe, the Shard, everything. But that was such a big decision, and I think it really pays off. And it's a great joke, beautifully shot by Keith Boak, that you get the gag of the reveal of the London Eye. But the sheer existence of it, that's my favourite thing, and set the tone for Doctor Who for a long time to come.
I do think it's an important part of the success. I mean, I remember I think it was on the Jonathan Ross clip compilation that was such a big part of my life. And there's one a year later that was on the Red Button, which has got Ron Donachie being pulled up to the ceiling by the werewolf, and that was loads of clips on that as well. Some of those previews where you got big loads of clips from the forthcoming season were as exciting as watching the episodes themselves. And that Jonathan Ross compilation I watched over and over and over again, and part of that I'm sure was the spaceship crashing into Big Ben, and again it just felt so right, even though yes, it doesn't happen with Doctor Who that much, does it? We've got the Dalek invasion of Earth, we've got the War Machines, we've got the Cybermen and St. Paul's, but the Daleks was originally going to be called the Daleks in London, wasn't it? And how different that might have been. But we get bits of abandoned London in Invasion of the Dinosaurs. But this seems like it was embracing the iconography in the way that you like I remember the trailer for the Avengers film, which was not a success, but in having things like phone boxes and stuff, you seem to be wanting the show to evoke landmarks that are in some ways so recognizable, and so they're comforting because they're there within Doctor Who, but they then lend Doctor Who a bit of a luster by being associated with the capital and things that we all have in our mind's eye, and images that bond us all as a nation or a culture or whatever, and then crash a spaceship into them, or have them have it as the place where the monster is underneath. I didn't actually ever consider that was daft. So it's interesting. Russell being so close to it would worry about that, but it seemed to me it was there for the lovely gag about the wheel, the wheel. But I never questioned the logic of it. But maybe because I was in it, and it comes so quickly after that sequence where they run across Westminster Bridge, where I think you're just totally on board now, and you go, we're here, or is it? I'm just trying to remember now. Is it before or is it after? Anyway, it's around that point. I've literally just watched it. My brain is addled. I'm now on nearly 5. It's now been a slightly longer podcast than I'd anticipated. I thought I'll get this done before lunch. But there's so much to talk about. But yes, the landmark is important, and it is something with which I associate you. And I think it's another one of those brilliant decisions. Particularly as it's filmed in Wales, so they have to especially go, let's just get these moments where we remind people that this is this is taking place sort of front and center, and that's not to demean Wales, but what I mean is that the iconography of London is something that I think we all we all have as a reference point, and it just seems like it's being played out on a big canvas, if it's there in front of all those things that we recognise, and I think this is important, as being sort of quintessentially British, because that is a key part of whatever it is that makes up Doctor Who. Yeah, good choice. I didn't choose it though.
Now, my favourite scene, and it's funny this, because it's not a favourite scene, but in a way it's the most important scene. It's after Hendrix has blown up, we go home with Rose. We find Rose in her flat with her mum, with Camille being absolutely hilarious on the phone. Camille doing stand-up on the phone, practically. In comes Mickey, worried about her. The news is reporting what's happened. The point is that there'd never been a scene like that before in Doctor Who. Not really like that. And that is where I think Doctor Who meshed with the television of 2005.
I think maybe that's when the audience went, oh, I get this. This is normal people going through extraordinary events. Scenes like that have existed in every cop drama. It's very funny. It's very cold feet. It's very me. It's also one of those moments where I think I'm taking over the format. I'm writing it thinking this is how I would write this. And that takes a lot of doing with a very strong format. And it's funny, and Mickey actually wants to see the football, doesn't care much, and Jackie's making money out of it. There's a lot of gags thrown into it, and a plot device with the Auton arm. So, yes, very, very proud of that scene, because it actually is, it's not a scene you'd pick as changing the whole format of Doctor Who, but it does. In just tiny little moments, it does. Lovely.
That's a very good point, and it's true, isn't it, that Doctor Who hasn't often done domesticity, and we think of how few couples there were, say, in classic Doctor Who, so much so that Greg and Petra in Inferno are the sort of pinnacles of successful romantic relationships, but. And even if we do have people who are sort of husband and wife, they're in husband and wife because that means we've got two characters who are together in the same place or anything. We often, we don't do domesticity all that much, and it's been obviously very effective when it has invaded a domestic setting, like Mr. Oak and Mr. Quill coming into Maggie Harris's bedroom in Fury from the Deep, and all of that. They're her Yeti on the loo in Tooting Bec, as it were, the gaseous Laurel and Hardy in your boudoir in Margate. But again, it's the economy of what Russell has is having that domestic setting with each person having their little line or their little drive that is counter to the other person, so everyone's robbing up and going in their slightly different directions, really economically put together, but in a setting that is recognisable. Talking to Steve O'Brien about Heat magazine being part of what Doctor Who was being mentioned in and evoking, and part of it was part of the conversation beyond in the places that everybody was. So it wasn't this thing you had to look for, or this thing that was just sort of there that you had. It was actually part of the fabric of what was going on in 2005, and obviously some of that was really deliberate. Some of that happened, I'm sure, by some form of osmosis, but it does give New Doctor Who and the launch of New Doctor Who an identity that is, slightly refreshing from what we'd been used to. Even though Survival is set in pretty much a similar sort of place, it didn't feel as though it was part of the culture in the same way. And I think Doctor Who 2005 feels very much part of the culture of 2005. And maybe we've imposed some of that upon it because we know it became emblematic of and influential of the culture. But nonetheless, it does feel that way. And I did feel it at the time that this was it was invading a space that we knew, but it was also really, really welcome there.
And then finally, the one thing, the favourite moment that was better in the novel than on screen. There's a few things in the novel that aren't on screen. Some big stuff, like the Doctor and Rose at the end travel in orbit around the Earth and look down at the Earth. But that's not something I wish was in the television version. It's just nice to do, but I didn't miss it on screen. It's simply in the flat once the Doctor has wrestled with the Auton arm in daytime, and then Rose becomes part of the fight, and they fall into the coffee table, and it goes smash, and it smashes the table. And in the novel, Jackie walks back into the room, sees her daughter rolling about on the floor with a sexy man in a leather jacket, and she says, "Rose Tyler, you tot." I can't believe I didn't put that in. I can't believe I didn't think of that moment when I was writing the script. That is pure Jackie, and I wish I had. Thank you, Toby. Thank you for the opportunity to do this. You were a great and positive force in the Doctor Who fandom, and that's a rare and brilliant thing. Thank you, darling. Lots of love. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Russell. And aren't I blessed that the person who brought back Doctor Who and has been so key to it and is now, back in charge. When I first met Russell, Doctor Who was in his past, but he kindly agreed to do my Who's Round interview. We'd never met, and gave me a lot of his time and a brilliant interview that I'm very proud of. And I shouldn't be. I didn't really do anything. It's just his generosity and the fact that he's prepared to engage. And we bump into each other now and again because we live in Manchester. I did walk past him on the way to Forbidden Planet once, but I didn't think I looked like an actor, so I didn't say anything. This was before Doctor Who had come back, because I thought, well, if you might not think I'm an actor, the things you think. Anyway, how nice, and he's been very kind over the years, and occasionally we'll send an email. Well, if I do a thing, he'll sometimes drop me a line out of nowhere and say something nice, and has been because. And why? I don't know. It's tricky, isn't it? Because I'm just a bloke, aren't I? But anyway, whatever. It's flattering and it's very nice, and I'm thrilled that he has contributed that insight, which I hope has rounded off a celebration. I hope has taken those of you that were there 20 years ago back to there, and what an exciting and brilliant and heady, and I have to say I'm feeling it again, that absolute excitement and anticipation. And as I'm recording this, it's getting pretty much to broadcast time. I'd expected to have this edited and ready to go at lunchtime, so best laid plans and all of that. Well, look, I'm keeping this one brief because this is the bonus episode to be released to tie in with the 20th anniversary. When episode 100 comes along, Russell will still be here, but his thoughts will be augmented by those of other contributors too, who've helped out with Happy Times and Places in the past, but also a couple who haven't, who are also on the writer's roster for Series 1 of Doctor Who. So that's something to look forward to, but I wanted to give you something on the day, or at least near the end of the day, the way that this is going. So thank you so much to Russell. It just goes to show, I wouldn't have believed 20 years ago whilst watching Doctor Who, only 3 minutes from where I am now. Russell hasn't moved. I've moved 3 minutes walk away from where I was. That one day I would be able to, if I plucked up the courage, speak to and get the contribution of the person who wrote and masterminded that episode, and indeed that whole first series, and the resurrection of Doctor Who, and is on the show now, and people are looking forward to a new series coming, and being Doctor Who fans, there's worry, there's rumour, there's conjecture, there's people really excited, there's people really cross. Oh, some things never ever change. But when those titles blast onto the television in just a few weeks' time, I'll be looking at Doctor Who and I'll be thinking, yeah, I want to come with you, because when I did 20 years ago, it opened up all sorts of things, and my life would not be the same. It's not been plain sailing. I look back on this 20th anniversary and I think of many things that make me very, very sad indeed, and lots that make me happy. And they're all seen through a prism of Doctor Who, because whatever happens in my life, good or bad, Doctor Who is always there. And his constant companion isn't just death. It's all of us as well. And I, for one, am very, very grateful. Thanks so much to Russell T Davies, and to you for listening. And remember to tune into this again in a few months' time when it's version 100, when it's edition 100 of Happy Times and Places, and we'll do this all over again, but with longer bits at the beginning and before the end. Bye. Thanks very much for listening to Happy Times and Places, which is presented by me, Toby Haydock, and my special guest this time around for this bonus episode, Russell T Davies. I am extremely grateful to Russell and to the supporters who make these podcasts possible, and they include Ruben Herfindahl, Stephen Moffat, Peter Burns, James Curray-Smith, Peter Harness, Ronald Hayden, Rob Leonard, Christopher Meredith, Gavin McLean, Richard Straw, Neil Tate, Nick Tedston, Tim Arding, Nigel Bromley, Paul Cook, Richard Chalk, Paul Chamberlain, Grant Davidson, John Deere, Chris Dunford-Kelk, Paul Dunn, El Pandras, Susie Ferguson, Jason Gorman, Paul Harris, Chris Hyam and Ian Key. The music is by Dave Gates and the artwork by Dylan Patterson. If you would like to support me on Patreon, you can do so by going to patreon.com/Toby Haydock, where you get advanced releases, bonus material, clips from behind the scenes of various Blu-rays and DVDs and all sorts of other things, and you get your own exclusive podcast called Far Too Much Information and exclusive AMAs. Tiers start from as little as £3 a month, but you get everything at that lowest level. Everything does become available later. In terms of the podcasts, they are all available here later, but you get all of them slightly earlier if you're on the Patreon platform. You can also support me at kofi.com/Toby Haydock if you just want to do a one-off donation to my artistic endeavours. But you can also support via by Spotify, iTunes, Apple, YouTube, all the places where you consume this stuff for absolutely free, and it costs you nothing to give a thumbs up, a 5 stars, a few lines of review, or just to spread the word and tell your friends. And if you do that, I'd be really, really grateful. I'm on all social media platforms. I'm on Twitter at Toby Haydock. I'm on Blue Sky as well. These podcasts have their own Twitter feed at Haydock Podcasts. I'm on YouTube. I've got a channel there. Like and subscribe and do all of that, where these go out with a sort of placeholder, no visuals. But if you like to consume them via YouTube, I'm there too. And that's where also things like my annual In Memoriam videos go. And I'm on Instagram. And I also run a comedy night in Manchester called Excess Malarkey. So if you're in the vicinity, come along to that of a Tuesday night. I'm all over the place. You can't miss me. Sorry. Happy Who anniversary. I literally can't do any more. I'm supposed to be getting a train in about an hour and 10 minutes, and I haven't done anything. But anyway, I wanted to get this out at this point.